So my friends, the time has finally come. Warlords of Draenor is, at long last, coming to an end, and we are a week away from the start of Legion. I think we're all looking forward to it. Some of us are probably more excited than others after how WoW's been lately, but the time is upon us. This is a follow-up to my last video, if you haven't watched it, where I talked about the importance of choosing and investing in a main character when playing any MMO, but particularly World of Warcraft, especially if you're wanting to get into high-end PvE or PvP. And today I am going to explain to you what my choice will be for Legion, what class I will be maining. Now before I do that, I want to explain a little bit about the criteria that I looked into when choosing my class, and how you can apply this in your choice if you don't already know which of your characters or which character in general you want to play in Legion. So there were three main factors that I considered, and the first was theme, and this is my most important factor in my personal opinion, and that is, do you like the theme of the class that you're going to play? So that should easily be able to discount about half of the classes available, because if you're like me and you're into kind of rogues and mean sort of characters and warriors and that kind of thing, then you're not really going to be enticed by, say, a monk or a druid, that kind of class. So the most important thing that you do is discount the classes that you don't like the theme of, that you don't want to see yourself playing, that you don't want to see as representing you. The last thing you want, guys, is to be playing a character that you don't like. Even if the gameplay is really good and well designed, if you're not into that class as an RPG class, then you will not enjoy it. There is no point in getting to high-end content, clearing bosses, if you're doing it on a character that you don't even like. So that is the first criteria that you need to address. Do that first of all. The second thing, and this is just as important if not more for most people, is gameplay. You need to pick a class that you like the gameplay of. It needs to be fun, it needs to be exciting. If you're looking for challenge, it needs to be challenging. If you're looking for simplicity, it needs to be simple. It needs to give you what you like in terms of RPG or MMO gameplay. So from that list of characters that have the themes that you like, from that list of classes, then discount the ones which don't have fun gameplay. Maybe you're not into the hunter, maybe you find it too simple. Maybe you're not into the paladin because you find Ret too simple. Maybe you don't like one of the rogue specs because you find it too complicated, that kind of thing. And from that you should be able to narrow down some more of the classes. And then the third and final factor, there are a few more little things, but the third main factor that you need to consider is, do you like multiple specs within that class? Because one thing that I would reiterate to you guys, I think it's really important that you understand, is that you are not rolling a spec, you are rolling a class. If you are a mage, you are a mage. You are not a fire mage or a frost mage or an arcane mage. If you roll a warrior, you are not just a fury warrior. If you roll a paladin, you are not just a rep paladin. You have to make sure, in my opinion, that you enjoy at least two of the three specs. You might prefer one to the others, but you need to enjoy at least two of the three specs available. Why? Well, let's just look, for example, in PvE. So you're in a raiding guild and you are playing a Frost Death Knight. But in the current tier of Legion that you're playing in, say it's a year down the road, Unholy is significantly higher in terms of numbers, DPS, and your raid leader and your raid team really want you to go Unholy. Now if you despise Unholy, you are playing a class where you only like one of the two DPS options available, and it's not like there's a third spec that's there for you to play. Similarly, for example, if you are playing a paladin, you need to ask yourself, am I comfortable healing? Am I comfortable tanking? Because if you're not, then you are limiting yourself to one spec. The reason why I think it's important that you like two of the three is because if you are comfortable with two of the three specs, the chances of one of those two being the preferable one at that time are quite high. But if you only like one of the three, the chances of one of the other two being preferable are quite high. So it's important that you like two of the three specs, and that includes the gameplay and the theme. By this point, you should have narrowed your class choices down to maybe one or two choices, and it should be quite clear for you. At that stage, I really think that what you should do is go on those classes, run something like the LFR, and I know everyone hates LFR, run the LFR, do some Legion invasions, and just practice on all of the three specs, and just think about how long can you see yourself playing this? How long can you remain invested? For how long can this really draw you in and grip you? And if the answer is for a long time, you've probably found your right spec, and there might be something that you didn't even think it would be. So, now that I've explained the criteria that I based my choice on, let me explain to you the choice that I have made as my main class for Legion. So let's look at the themes first of all. From this, I was able to discount a good half or more of the specs available, mainly because of, as you know if you watch my channel, I like characters which are tough and mean, which are quite dark, a bit of an edgelord thing going on, you know, just something that I consider badass to me personally. So for me, this discounted immediately the Druid, the Paladin, the Monk, the Demon Hunter, and the Hunter. And the reason why I picked those classes is just my personal preferences. I'm not interested in them. Some of them are nature themed, which doesn't really appeal to me in terms of RPG classes, and others just, well, in the case of the Demon Hunter, for example, it's not that I don't like the idea of the class, it's more that it's very much flavour of the month right now, which doesn't appeal to me. But all credit and good luck to those of you who are thinking about switching and converting to playing Demon Hunter mains in Legion. I hope that it goes well for you. You will be the vanguard of those of us who play Demon Hunters in the future, I am sure. So, now that I've cancelled out those classes based on the theme, then let's look at the ones I cancelled out because of gameplay. And sadly, I have to start out by talking on a sad note about my favourite class in the game, which I am not going to play because the gameplay is shit at the moment to me personally, and that is my rogue. A lot of you guys, if you watch my channel, know that I love my rogue and that I used to play my rogue all the time, played it on vanilla server, all kinds of stuff. It was definitely my favourite character in terms of the class fantasy, but the only one of the 3 rogue specs that I like right now is the assassination spec, and even then I did a full HFC heroic run as assassination and I didn't find that enjoyable at all. I found that I had to be focusing far too much on my rotation as opposed to enjoying the encounters, which for me is something that I don't really like the sound of, especially going into these high mobility encounters that we can expect in Legion. And that was on assassination, which is the only one of the 3 specs that I actually enjoy. I also find it visually uninspiring. Another personal note, I find it visually uninspiring even compared to the other melee classes. If you look at the Fury Warrior, if you look at the Demon Hunter, the Monk, even the Death Knight, all of these other classes look visually inspired. They have their own really particular look, whereas the Rogue, other than the Outlaw Rogue, doesn't seem to look very visually inspiring to me. It doesn't look particularly eye-catching, it doesn't draw you in, visually speaking, and the Outlaw Rogue, the only one that does look alright in my opinion, is my least favourite of them all due to the RNG, but I won't get into that. The sad but true point is that I've concluded that I will most definitely not be maining my rogue in the start of Legion, and probably at any point during Legion, unless there is a massive reworking of the class, which I really doubt will happen. So the next class that I'm going to look at is the Death Knight. Believe it or not, that was actually going to be my choice as my main for Legion. I'd made a full video saying about how I was going to start off as a Frost Death Knight because I like the look of Frost and I like the look of Unholy, and if I did want to tank at any point in the expansion, I could go Blood. Remember I said that you have to like 2 of the 3 specs for it to be worth your time, and I did like 2 of the 3 specs. In fact, I liked all 3, even though tanking wasn't at the front of my mind when I wanted to choose the Death Knight. The issue with the Death Knight was a simple one. Whilst I found the combat on Frost really interesting, I couldn't picture myself raiding as it for a long period of time, and with that knowledge it didn't really matter how good Unholy was, because that would just leave Unholy as the only other DPS spec that I would want to play, and to be honest with you, I just think that I'd probably grow bored of that as well. Plus the theme of the Death Knight isn't as appealing to me as some of the other classes, so for that reason the Death Knight is also out for my personal choice, though I do think that it is a good class to play, especially if you are into that kind of gameplay. I just personally am not at the moment. So now we can start looking at the classes which have maybe really interesting gameplay on 1 or even 2 of the specs, but maybe had a nuanced reason why they didn't appeal to me. Perhaps I would have to have leveled that class if I wanted to play it, or perhaps I didn't want to do a role such as tanking or healing in order to play a DPS spec that I really liked the sound of. I'm thinking in terms of the Shadow Priest, I'll get into that later. So now that we're down to the more specific choices, it leads me to talk about another sad topic, which is that I will not be playing my warrior. Now for those of you who don't know, my warrior was effectively my main through the first half of Warlords of Draenor. I mained as a prop tank, and I was a raid leader of my guild, and I had some great times. That class and that spec in particular was fantastic in Warlords of Draenor, but in Legion I don't really want to tank. It's not at the front of my mind, as I said before. So going into Legion, I'm going to treat it as though we're just looking at Arms and Fury. And if Arms and Fury were both really fun, really good gameplay, and offered a bit of challenge, then the Warrior would probably have been what I went with. But here's the thing. Fury is fun and it looks visually awesome, but it isn't as meaty as I think it was earlier in the beta. I think it's been revised a little bit, kind of toned down a little bit, tuned, and I don't really find it as fun in terms of longevity as other people might do. I can't picture myself raiding on a Fury Warrior. I think after the first 10 to 12 hours of raiding in that spec, it will grow tiresome for me. And I know that if I had to switch to Arms, I would personally really hate doing that. I don't like the Colossus Smash based spec, and Arms has always been, it's been one of those specs where if you're going to DPS as a warrior, you can expect to go as Fury, and I don't like being boxed into that one spec choice. It's just my personal opinion. The next class that I will look at then, in terms of ones I dropped because of spec, will be the Shaman. Now, the Shaman is in a really good place. Shaman, I should say. I know you guys hate when I say Shaman. The Shaman is in a really good position at the moment. Enhancement is, in my opinion, the best it's ever been. Elemental, it's probably not the best it's ever been in my personal opinion, but a lot of people think that it is, and I think it's really fun. But the problem is that if I was going to go the Shaman, I would want to go Elemental, but I would feel as though if I wanted to change spec, I would have a choice between a healer and a DPS. I don't really want to heal, and the DPS spec, the other DPS spec Enhancement, is completely different. It's a dual-wielding melee spec, so completely different to Elemental, and that complete contrast in the theme of those two specs kind of just makes it unattractive for me, personally. So I'm not really going to go as the Shaman. The other choice would be the Warlock, and this brings in a fourth factor which is personal for me, which is leveling. I don't have a level 100 Warlock, and some of you who are watching this don't have level 100s of every class as well. So I know that if I wanted to play the Warlock, I would have to either boost one, which costs a lot of money, I'm not prepared to do that, or I would have to level one, which at this point in time is a really bad idea, guys. Not only is there the fear that I wouldn't hit level cap before the release of the new expansion, which would be really annoying and irritating, but there's the other issue, which for me as a raider is a bigger issue, which is that a lot of raiding guilds want to see your time played on that character. They want to feel that you're invested in the character that you want to raid with, otherwise you might just drop out after a couple of raids. That does happen, you could drop out after a couple of raids. Now, if you've just boosted the character, or just leveled the character straight up to max and then try to go straight into raiding, the problem is that they're going to see that you've only got like a day or 2 or 3 days or even 10 days playing on that character, rather than, the 50 days, 70 days that other people have, and that just shows a lack of experience, the lack of investment in that particular character. So I wasn't going to play any class that I would have to level. It's also why the Shaman is out, because my Shaman is currently level 90, and I can't be asked doing the Walls of Draenor leveling for like a 4th time. So Shaman was out for that reason, and the Warlock was out for that reason, even though I think that the Warlock is probably in quite a good place, and I would play Destro and Demonology quite a lot. Demonology especially looks really fun, so good luck to all you guys who are playing a Warlock. That left me with a choice of the Priest and the Mage. And here was the issue with the Priest and the Mage. I wanted to play a Shadow Priest. I think that Shadow Priests right now look fantastic, and I would love to try them out. But like with the Warlock, I do not have a Priest. In the past, it hasn't even occurred to me that I would play a Priest. I've never normally liked casters, and now I find myself in a position where all of the main choices for me would be casters. So I would have to level a Priest, something I don't want to do. And then there's that other important question. Are at least two of the 3 specs fun to play? And as a Priest, only one of those 3 specs is DPS. And like I said, I don't want to heal. So no matter how good Shadow is, the problem would arise at some point in time that Shadow may fall out of favour and it might do crap DPS. It's not going to be the case right at the start of Legion, but at some point later on, there might be a point where it does really bad DPS, and then I would have no choice other than to go as a healer, which is something that I would not want to do, I can say that categorically, or I would have to switch classes, which is just not what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to have one main through the expansion, which left me with one class. Yeah guys, I will be playing my Mage. Why, you ask? Why would somebody who's used to playing rogues and warriors want to play a mage in this expansion? Well, let's look at that criteria again. In terms of the theme, being a pyromaniac or a frost-wielding, bone-chilled undead lich style character or a wizard style arcanist, it does appeal to me. I really like the idea, especially being a pyromaniac. In terms of the gameplay, all three classes play differently and at the same time play well. I find Frost to be the most enjoyable in terms of gameplay, Fire to be the most enjoyable in terms of theme, and I like how Arcane is a solid spec that is different from the other two, and I would be willing to play that as well. So all three specs appeal to me, not just two, all three do. The theme appeals to me very much so, and the gameplay from all three is really good. So I will be playing a mage in Legion, and I'm looking forward to doing it. Honestly, I've been playing the mage a lot over the last week or so, and it feels like the right decision, and I'm just starting to enjoy the nuances and getting better with the class more and more the more time I sink into it. So when the new expansion comes and the artifact weapons and all that goes with it, I am confident that I will be happy playing my mage. So there you go guys, that is how I chose my class, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you in choosing your class. It is really important that you select your main character, and it is a character that you will want to play when the expansion finally launches in just over a week's time. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Mittens, and I will see you in the next thing that I make. Bye bye.